on the opening panel and then go from 9:45 to 10:30 on the second panel. And there will be an opportunity to do some networking following the second conversation as well. So without further ado, I will welcome our great group of panelists for panel one. If you guys want to come up on stage, Tracy, Brian, Bentley, Justin, Eric, and Elliot, come on up. And as I mentioned, opening panel conversation is going to key in on some leading developments and acquisitions here in Queens and Long Island City. And without further ado, Elliot, I will turn it over to you. Let you introduce yourself, let the panelists introduce themselves, and we'll get into things.
Thanks so much, Chris, and thank you for having us. Great to be here. Great conversation. My name is Elliot Baum. I'm a principal at East Strategy, our real estate marketing strategic firm. Do a lot of work in this market, and we have a great panel today, and we're going to have a great conversation. So, and we'll go down the line and we'll get into it.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Benaim. I'm the CEO and founder of Modern Spaces. We're a real estate brokerage and marketing firm based here in Long Island City and Western Queens. We have offices throughout Queens as well as Jersey City, and we specialize in new development marketing.
I am Tracy, Vice President of Kaufman Astoria Studios, and we are working on expanding our business, building new sound stages, as well as innovating MS.
I'm Justin Pelsinger. I'm COO of Charney Companies. We're a Long Island-based development firm with projects around Brooklyn and Queens. Hello. Hi, I'm Justin Pelsinger, COO of Charney Companies. We're a Long Island City-based development firm with projects throughout Brooklyn and Queens.
Good morning, everybody. This is Bentley Zhao. I'm the CEO of New Empire Corporation. So we are based in Midtown, also Brooklyn headquarters. So we have 4 pilot projects coming up, especially we like Queens. So we have one project Queens Plaza North and one at Woodside.
Hello. Good morning. I'm Brian Collins, Executive Vice President, Head of Development for Property. I'm Brian Collins. I'm Executive Vice President, Head of Development for Silverstein Properties. A couple of projects in Astoria, partners with Kaufman Innovation Queens Project. Another development, multifamily development.
So let's see if the mics will work on this. Derek, I'm going to start with you. There's been a lot of different type of asset classes developed and transformed in Long Island City, Queens, market. Which asset classes high demand?
I think the highest demand right now is obviously residential. Offices, unfortunately, are still lagging behind due to COVID and people wanting to work from home, although I'm a big supporter of working from our office. Our staff works at the office. But residential is actually what's been booming the last probably 24 months. Long Island City was actually the first neighborhood in the entire city to bounce back after COVID. And it's a big testament, I think, to the market here and where I think we will end up going.
What do you think has been a driver of the catalyst of that market, of people looking at this area and those residentials here?
I think there's a lot of people moving around, shifting around from different neighborhoods across the city. You have people also from outer Queens who are moving to Long Island City, and we were getting actually a lot of people right after COVID. We were getting a lot of people from Manhattan coming to Long Island City. It's a walkable area. It's mixed use, and I mean, to me, I live here. I've been living here for 16 years, and it's like living in the city, but also kind of like a small town. So it's like a mix of suburb, city kind of thing. And I could see how a lot of people are attracted to that.
Yeah, the walkable city has been
Yeah.
real attraction, being able to walk to work or walk to any of the attractions. Justin, with some of the projects you've been looking at, tell me about some of the asset classes.
Yeah, I mean,
your projects.
we historically, I think Eric sort of hinted at that, we historically used to see a very specific type of person moving to Long Island City, those that had commuting-related issues to Midtown or the Upper East Side. During COVID, we saw, not only in Long Island City, but also in Brooklyn, we saw a lot of people that we never would have seen, people from like the Upper West Side or the financial district where commuting doesn't really make sense, looking at Long Island City. And I think it's for the reasons that Eric is outlining, that, you know, people want more open space. We have amazing parks here. The amenity packages and buildings tend to be nicer than other neighborhoods. The rents are getting high, but if you sort of still qualify the rent per quality of building, they surpass Manhattan buildings even with the same sort of doorman situation. So I think you're just seeing people that don't necessarily need to commute every single day. If they do, they don't mind going a little bit further. And what they want is, you know, a better neighborhood with more space.
We're seeing, especially on the rental market and even office, that amenities are key. What are some of the things that you've been seeing, or some of those trends that you think that you've been either installing in your properties or seeing that's really moving the needle?
Yeah, I think that the amenity packages and buildings are being risen to a completely new level. You know, for our project in Court Square, the fitness facility that's going to be getting built there, whether it's having a gym or whether it's having, you know, a basketball court, but the gym programming, you know, we don't allow the architect to really do the gym programming anymore. We bring in the Right Fit, who's sort of the premier gym designer, to do all of the layouts for that, and making sure it's programmed to have, you know, high intensity stuff, yoga, you know, plunge pools, you know, everything that the modern renter or owner would want. We're seeing that the community that comes to these buildings is at a complete new level fitness-wise. So we're doing that, and we're also looking at interesting things like pickleball courts. We're also looking at having, you know, small little mini golf areas outdoors. So we're finding that unique amenities on top of an extraordinarily robust fitness and wellness package is what tenants want right now.
I'd like to also say that aside from the great amenities that all the projects offer, the neighborhood itself has a lot of amenities. I came into this neighborhood in 2005, and there was one supermarket and no pharmacy, and now we have about a half a dozen supermarkets. We have a Target opening at the end of this year, probably maybe 7 or 8 pharmacies, so much retail now. So the neighborhood at itself has been really exploding.
Absolutely. You know, we're marketing properties. You know, the building itself is the destination, but you're really starting with that 12-mile radius, really showing, you know, the approach and all the things that are offered. You know, Brian and Tracy, both, you know, with Q&S and even the film studios, talking about asset classes, and you get to, you know, you're diving into both. You know, talk to us a little bit about that with the asset classes and some of the demand you're seeing.
So I think one of the things that's interesting is folks in this audience think about film studios as an emerging market. And I would argue that we've been at it building sound stages and building the business for 40 years. And I think one of the things that gets overlooked, we are thrilled that Hackman Capital and Square Mile purchased the studio and that we're part of the Manhattan Beach Studio family of properties. That's wonderful, and it allows us to continue to grow our business. But for years and years, the studio relied on a combination of city support in a city lease and the state tax credit to really grow this business. And we took our private investment and kept building new stages for the single purpose of growing the industry. So it's been an interesting evolution.
That's great. And I want to talk about film studios a little bit more in depth after this, because it's really becoming an asset class. And this area is really becoming an industry city of that. And, you know, talk about that between here and LA and kind of the economy between that. It's really exciting.
We're better than LA. But,
Of course we are.
But truthfully, one of the things that's interesting, particularly with Kaufman, is we are a light manufacturing use in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And so we have 2,000, 2,500 employees cycling through every day, and they go to the bars and the restaurants in the neighborhood. They want to live in the neighborhood. They want to walk to work like everyone else. But as importantly, the industry supports hardware stores and dry cleaners and paint and lumber yards, all these ancillary industries. So it really has a ripple effect and is an economic driver for the neighborhoods it's in.
And you talked about a little bit the third-party tenants that really make up that ecosystem, right? It's not just the studios, it's not just the, you know, even the Instagrams of the world that needing those nice places to film and the YouTubers, but it's all the people that service and support that.
So I would say one of the things that's interesting is before this crazy content explosion, the studio really invested in bringing things to the neighborhood that it believed could make it a 24/7 neighborhood. I worked with Eric on the Marks, 5-6 years ago now, a while ago, which is a condominium building. And that came about because people wanted to live in the neighborhood and there was not enough housing stock. We built our Stages O&N building with an extra 75,000 square feet of third-party tenant space. And we're thrilled to rent the Stages to Apple, but even more thrilled to rent the third-party office space to Apple as an office tenancy. So creating the ecosystem that expands the manufacturing base to include the office and residential components to really make it a 24/7 neighborhood has been something we've been keenly interested in, which is one of the reasons why we are partnering with Silverstein on Innovation Queens. It's a natural evolution and a tremendous opportunity to work with a partner, including Bedrock Real Estate Partners, who aren't here today. And the three of us controlling 5 city blocks is extraordinary, and we're trying to make it an extraordinary opportunity for the city and the neighborhood at large.
And that ecosystem is really what makes it thriving, right? We're hitting all the components from the residential, commerce, and this. And Brian, could you talk a little bit about Q&S and the work you and Tracy are doing and how that's really taking shape and forging ahead in this market?
Well, we really are building on what the studios accomplished. Innovation Queens is about 3 million square feet?
Yes.
3 million square feet, of which there's 2,800 apartments, there's a couple 100,000 square feet of office, there's community space, open space, retail, and so we're literally building on what Kaufman has already started in that part of Astoria. Where we are in the process is we're in the Euler process now, and we're in front of the borough president, so it's the second phase. We're in front of the borough president. The borough president's recommendation is
End of July.
End of July, so it's coming up. Then we go to city planning, and then we go to the local councilman. And whether you're in support or not in support of Innovation Queens, I strongly support you guys coming out and making your voices heard. The process has been pushed down to the neighborhood and the community level, and that's a terrific thing. But it really then requires the community to come out and express their opinion. We have a website, iqns.com.
InnovationQNS.com.
Innovation. Usually there's a Jameson who's doing what I'm doing here. He knows all that stuff. So, and we're hopeful. It's about $3 billion of development, which would be tremendous. The number of jobs, the amount of tax revenue, the number of just business activity and open space and cultural activity that it will generate, we think would be a real help, real building on what's already there in the story.
That's great, and interesting hearing how the correlation thinking about the student design outfit, it kind of translated a little bit to some of the strategy of the Q&S. Really where it becomes a community. And talk a little bit about that, because that seems that was at the forefront of the development.
So I will say one of the things that Kaufman was very fortunate in is finding partners who would let us build on the existing not-for-profits in the neighborhood and include them as partners in the development. We made partnerships early and often with folks like the LGBT Network, Jacob Reese Neighborhood Settlement, the Queens Library, bringing a tech lab. And one of the things that was interesting is part of this community feedback that Brian spoke to. We thought that the community wanted a performing arts center. And it became very clear in the town halls and in the stakeholder conversations that what they really wanted to see were these community not-for-profits delivering workforce development and training. And that became a community innovation hub for the 3 partners I just mentioned, as well as Urban Upbound will have an entrepreneurship program in there. Pioneer Works and the Museum of the Moving Image have expansion arts programming. The Floating Hospital will be a charity hospital, duplicating what they've done in Queensbridge. So it's really trying to bring a variety of programming assets to the neighborhood and expanding service provision that's of our existing community today. And I think that that will trickle out to make a better neighborhood for everybody on top of the open space.
That sounds great. And I think as we're coming out of COVID and we're finding different behaviors and ways to engage with the community, that's going to be an exciting project. Bentley, talk to us a little bit some of the asset classes or how you're looking at the market and maybe some of the projects you're working on and how it fits into the growth of this area.
Okay, currently we have 2 projects at Queens. One at Queens Plaza North is the prime location in Queens, but our company strategy is different than the Silverstein, right? So we are target for condo. So most of our condos about 100 units, plus or minus. So that's our strategy. So we're not relying on 421A, but definitely now 421A no more. Property is a better help for condo developer, right? And it's really hard for rental project, right? So let's say our prime location at Long City, a lot of the competitor. So for us, we need to have better amenity, create a convenient for the most buyer, design, quality. Everybody talk about that. So if we want to have a successful project, a key location of the Long City, you need to, compete with everybody, right? Big money, luxury condo, luxury amenity, it's not easy to do a job in Long City today, especially the price so close to Manhattan today, right? So average about, I think, we need to expect to sell 1,500 per square feet in the prime location of Long City in order to make some profit. Today, Manhattan is about 2,000. So basically, the price is so close together, about 20 to 30% price away. But talking for our and the Woodside project, everybody said, hey, there's only neighborhood coming up. It's still a rental area. But for us, we consider when most guys don't have money to buy for prime location or Long City, or they consider buy or rental, there might be the sub-market or Woodside, and we target for sale for 1,100 per square feet. A luxury condo might be another option for most first home buyer, or somebody hesitate to be land or buy. So give them another option for our Woodside project,
I think when you talk about condominium and people investing in the market, right, I think that shows the strength as well. And Eric, you're dealing straight, you're marketing these properties, you're dealing with different type of demographics of people coming into this market and seeing these products. How are they reacting to these new type of products coming to?
I mean, I'll use Woodside. He has, and I agree. He'll actually, I think, do really well in his Woodside project. 10 years ago, we marketed a project called Icon 52 on 52nd Street and Queens Boulevard, and the average price per square foot. It was a rental project, about 50-something units, and the average price per square foot in the market was $17 a square foot.
How much?
$17 back then. This is 10 years ago.
17?
$17 a square foot. But there was nothing new and modern at the time. So, and our project was a new modern building. It was on Queens Boulevard. I was a little bit nervous because it was across the street from a cemetery, so half the units were facing a cemetery. And we opened up a week after the Super Bowl, and in 6 weeks, we completely leased out the entire building at an average of $37 a square foot. So it shows that the market wanted something new and modern, and with amenities, and they were able to pay for it. So I do think that when you do a plan, or if you're in the planning stages right now, whatever numbers you're probably shooting for, you'll probably end up getting, because there is a market for that in the neighborhood. So yeah, there's a lot of Queens. I think in the last 10 years, I give credit to Long Island City, is what probably put really Queens on the map. It gave a scope for developers, for people in Manhattan, Brooklyn, wherever, to be like, okay, let me look into Long Island City. When they couldn't find things back then that couldn't pencil out, they would go to Astoria, or they would go to Sunnyside, or Woodside, and now they're going, and Flushing, and other markets in Queens, and I think Queens is still, even though there's a lot of areas in Queens that are being developed, it's still hugely untapped.
That's so, Justin, talking about that and your greenhouse project, and
So,
some of the strategies.
I mean,
for that.
I'll use an example on, and then I could talk about the greenhouse a little bit. You know, when we built the Jackson just 5 years ago, it's a small building, so water source heat pump system is out of the question, it's too small. So you say, all right, we going VRF, we going PTAC. At the time, it was an obvious answer that VRF didn't drive any value, so we went PTAC. Now, 5 years later, we're building a rental building 2 blocks up, and it's an entirely VRF system. We're not even considering PTAC. So I think like you're seeing the condo market continuing to mature. I know in Eric's building in Irish Loft, there was an enormous sale. Obviously, like the per square foot, I mean, there's a lot of square footage, but I think when you start seeing people investing that absolute dollar amount in the market, it's just showing that people are not considering this a second-tier area, and they're really investing here.
And I do think that there's still opportunity to push the envelope a little bit, not too crazy, obviously, but we pushed the envelope at the Jackson, and we broke records at the time.
Yeah, and it was a PTAC, right? And now you're seeing rental buildings doing VRF. So, you know, the greenhouse is only a few blocks away. It's opening in October. It's going to be a rental building. It's a boutique, but it's an all-electric building. We call it the greenhouse for a bunch of different reasons. One, because it has this gorgeous artisanal green terracotta on the outside. The other is because it is an all-electric building. So we believe that this building is going to have wellness, energy efficiencies. In fact, all of our buildings are now all-electric. We are preparing for Local Law 97. We know the city wants you to build electric. We're moving away from gas. And I think that people are going to be trying to play catch-up when they start realizing in 2024 that in a year or so from now, there's all this benchmarking requirements that are coming down the pike. But the greenhouse is all electric, all the appliances are all electric, and we're also incorporating artwork in the greenhouse like we do on all of our projects. I know Eric's a big street art collector, but we have these gorgeous fail murals on both sides of the building. It was a way for us to pretty much take lot line walls and convert them to canvases. So, you know, developers know that corner buildings are amazing because you don't have these, you know, ugly conditions, but when you have a through block, especially a deep through block, you know, the biggest facades end up actually being the side. Typically, you just dump some EFIS on that and call it a day and walk away. But what we decided to do is we looked at the EFIS wall and said, this is really just a big canvas. So we brought in Fail, who are 2 Brooklyn-based street artists. Sam Charney is a big street art collector, as I know Eric is. So we commissioned Fail. They did these gorgeous murals on both sides of the building. And then we also brought in Jen Lewin. So Jen Lewin's an art designer based in Brooklyn. So in the lobby, we're going to have sort of like a big interactive light fixture so the tenants can go up and they can actually kind of dance under the light fixture and change all the colors and stuff like that. And we're going to have a plant wall and a great gym and amenities. So yeah, the greenhouse we think is positioned to be sort of this really cool boutique, environmentally friendly, wellness, artistic sort of building in the heart of Long Island City.
That talks a lot to what Eric was saying about this is a walking city and the beautification of it and finding those walls and turning them into artwork, or even some of these industrials that maybe have graffiti, and we can find ways to, you know, put living walls or beautify them up. And, you know, just walking up to the event, you're driving on Vernon and you're seeing all this retail and you're seeing it vibrant. And that, to me, really shows the city, and especially with all the residential coming around in the earlier years, it was one is the retail. Now that's becoming a little more vibrant. A little talk about that, or what are some of the type of companies that are looking at the area, or what are some of the tenants demanding that they need that's really helping thrive?
I mean, we've been saying it for years that Long Island City is actually is one of the most under-retailed areas in New York City. You know, cap rates on retail is very high right now, so I think that if you're playing the long game, I think retail does have a lot of long-term value here. But you're starting to see more and more retailers pop up. They're obviously, you know, heavily going into the Court Square, Jackson Avenue area just because of density. But up and down Vernon Boulevard, I mean, we put Pure Bar into Vernon Boulevard, so we thought that was a great sort of amenity for the area. And at the greenhouse, we're also looking at, you know, types of retailers that are going to add value. We're seeing tons of daycares opening up. We're obviously seeing more Asian sorts of retailers and businesses, restaurants opening up in the area. There's a really cool Japanese fish market that just recently opened up. So I do think that you're going to start seeing more and more people come here. If you think how close we are to Williamsburg, and if you walk around Williamsburg, the type of retail, there's a Google store there right now. There's pop-up stores all the time. We don't really have that in Long Island City. I think that retail is going to continue to come here.
And Shirley, if you go to the area by Domino Park and all that walking area and the outdoor gardens and the sculptures, Bentley, talk to us a little bit about some of your strategy with the mixed-use development. What are some of the things you're looking for as you're programming your condominiums?
Say again your question?
A little bit about your strategies of when you're putting together your condos, some of the either mixed use that you're looking to bring in, some of the retail that maybe you're looking to bring at the bottom of your condos, or what are some of the tenants that are looking, what are they asking for as they're learning about the area?
I mean, for our project, right, so because the size of the project, right, so I think retail in that combination of the project for us and not the rents, because when the project is too small, you cannot have a major retail space. You need to bring some like Price supermarket, like Whole Foods, you can bring up the value. If not, retail in our condo project is a minus. It's not a plus for us because you're not big enough. So for talk about our project, 100 units. So we try to limit that retail space and bring up more space for the residential area. And then for retail, we try to target for coffee shop, that the fancy, store. We don't target for big retail space in our project. I talk about a unit mix, in general, most of our project at Queens, we target for everybody, studio, 1 bedroom, fancy 2 bed. So that's our unit mix we need to target for. But,
I'm sure home offices and balconies are at the top of some of those lists. But that also, now I want to bring that to Justin and Eric, again, with the type of people that are now looking for this type of product. And we talked about film, which is a whole new industry that's coming in here. Obviously been here with the work that you're doing, but more eyes, so just bringing different type of users and tenants to this market. What kind of people or different areas that are you seeing coming to this area? Are people coming in from California, people coming in from different parts of the market? And what other industries are you seeing that's really burgeoning here, that's driving that?
We're not really seeing people from California, but we are seeing a lot of people throughout Queens. I mean, when we marketed the Marks, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, 100% of our buyers, if you remember, were all Astoria locals. And we thought we were going to get people from Long Island City and other markets, but no, 100% were all Astoria locals. And I think it's going to be, when we open up Innovation Queens, I think you're going to see a lot of Astoria locals who are going to be attracted to Innovation Queens and just want a more modern, I guess, lifestyle of living. But we are seeing we are seeing a trend of a lot of people coming from Flushing, from other parts of Queens like Forest Hills. Where else are we seeing from? We're seeing from Jackson Heights and Astoria. There's a lot of correlation between Astoria and Long Island City. A lot of people going back and forth. Astoria is obviously a booming market also, aside from Long Island City.
How is all the infrastructure development that's going to come into this market going to help the projects in the area that you've been working on?
It depends. I think one of the things that we have is good infrastructure that matters to people right out the gate, right? We have the subway access, we have bus access, we have the rideshare programming, and all of the city bike and stuff is still here, or Lyft bike or whatever they're called now. But I think that's the basis, and I think, as my boss likes to say, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker is already here in Astoria, and now Long Island City has it as well. But I think we are facing the challenges of, Brian, the sewer system. We know that's something that's going to have to be replaced as part of Innovation Queens, right? Just as a natural mitigating factor. The question is how extensive that's going to have to be to accommodate the project. And I think that Long Island City faces similar issues, even more so because of the proximity to the river. So that's an open question, and how this city and the state can help us. Maybe there are infrastructure dollars from the federal government that can help folks really do the infrastructure upgrades that the older industrial neighborhoods need.
Justin, any of your experience you can show? Brian, sorry.
So it's interesting because good old days, the government took care of infrastructure.
Correct.
And now what's happening, you know, in our negotiations on Innovation Queens is it's getting pushed down to the project level. And that's a burden, which if you're looking at a one-off property, that property is not dealing with the sewers, not dealing with open space, not dealing with cultural programming, not dealing with those sorts of things. But when you look at a large-scale ULURP, that's all getting pushed down to the project level.
And it's including the stuff from the one-off developments that have
Sure.
happened that weren't accounted for.
So in order to upgrade, I mean, Tracy and I chuckle because this is a right now we're talking about how we deal with the infrastructure costs, and it's in excess of $100 million. And the ask is, well, you have to not only build out the sewers and the water in your project, but go several blocks beyond to tie into the main on Northern Boulevard, and it's an evolving way of the city doing business, right? So it's a challenge. You know, schools are no different, right? So you do the environmental impact study, and the environmental impact study says, gee, there are no schools needed. But if you ask any parent in that neighborhood, to a person, they think that more schools are needed. And so that's, again, you know, that used to be the city would take care of that, the community would take care of that, but now it's getting pushed down to the developer. So it really makes it challenging.
And we thought there was going to be a school required and set land aside for it. And so we were as surprised as anyone not to be told that the SCA can't build something because the numbers don't support it in the environmental impact statement. So it's been an interesting ride so far.
Justin, Bentley, have you found the same challenges or?
Yeah, I mean, I think you bump into a lot of these sewer-related infrastructure issues on big ULURPs. In Long Island City, we're not under a big ULURP. In Gowanus, there's a massive study that's going on, and actually everybody is literally saying, where's my site connection proposal, approval? Where's my SD 1 and 2? Like, when are these going to be coming through? And you're getting responses back from DEP saying, we're reviewing, there's this master thing, and everybody's lobbying and trying to find out these questions. And I think you tend to bump into those issues when you're doing these master developments. Gowanus is going to be 8,000 apartments, right? So and then this is a big project for them in Queens. Our local projects in Long Island City are not under that, so we can just kind of fall under, like, throw in your detention tank, hold it, and then kind of release it. The biggest thing we end up with is increased electric usage. So we end up having to throw transformers into the sidewalks. We obviously have to install that. We try to get reimbursed as best as we can, but usually you take a little loss on that. But, you know, I think you just have to bake that into your budget and offset it. I mean, in Greenhouse, we're putting an electronic charger, EV charging station. Every single parking space has an EV charger. And, you know, that takes electric. If you want the building to go all electric, that also takes electric. And, you know, you're gonna need to throw a vault, a transformer into the sidewalk to deal with that. That has real costs, but we're hoping that planning for the future is going to reap benefits.
How is that affecting maybe in Bentley as well?
I think for our project also, right? We are 120 units for our project. So basically, we need to pay for National Grid for $750,000 to bring a new gas main into the project. So we don't have that budget. So why we need the gas? We turn to electrical. So that's another problem for Queens. We come up neighborhood, they don't have enough, enough utility service for the entire area of Long Island City. It's booming, definitely, So all the developers do the job in the neighborhood like us, in the Queens Pasadena, not too much in major condo. So we need to pay for that gas service by ourselves,
So with that, as we're concluding this conversation, we talked about this a little bit the other day, 421A and the expiration of that, how's that going to impact the future of the housing market and potentially other developments that are in the market now, or some of the things that you're looking at as well?
Yeah, I mean, the expiration of 420A is going to pretty much stop, the new rental projects in the city. I think that the other issue that we're going to bump into is that some projects got their pile on the ground, but they're just not going to finish in time. So that's going to be another issue. And I think that the double whammy with, I think, 420 expiring is also the financing market. So you have a lot of people who underwrote a deal with traditional financing. Interest rates are up. Banks are being more selective. Not everybody, has enormous balance sheets and has the ability to go get the deals financed at the cost of capital they underwrote, and they're going to end up with debt funds. They're going to end up having to layer in mezz to make the deal work. Will that make the numbers not work? Are they not going to be able to raise capital now for those deals? And does that mean that the deal, even though it got a pile on the ground, doesn't actually get financed? So I think you're going to see, one, nude land transactions just kind of stand still because nobody knows how to underwrite them, except maybe with a 420C or an Article 11 if it's sort of on the, the areas where land kind of makes sense for that. But if it doesn't, you're going to see those land deals not trade. And then you're going to also bump into things that have traded and were underwritten a certain way and got the pile on the ground, and they have all these hopes, but they're not going to be able to necessarily get it financed. And I think what that means is that developers with experience, with the with the connections to lenders, are going to get their deals done, are going to get financed, and going to get built. And then in 3-4 years from now, you're just going to see a lot less supply, and they're probably going to reap the benefits. The other thing you're going to see is people try to shift into condo. But I think the financing market doesn't help your shift into condo, and then you're going to have certain developers. I think Bentley's going to do great because he might find himself with not as many competitors selling condo, because not everybody can seamlessly just transition from rental to condo. It's not always easy to finance condo, and that's tends to be why a lot of times people are building rental, aside from wanting long-term value and ownership.
Bentley, Justin Trade, is that going to impact some of the future projects maybe you're looking at, or?
I think that 421A for the condo is a plus and also a minor. Let's say if the rental project, they don't have a 421A, what they can do. So they might consider convert to condo, right? If they convert to condo, so the inventory will be a lot coming up the market. Let's say if a Silverstein put 3,000 unit condo into market, they need to sell for 10 years. So, so gonna kill the whole market, right? It's a problem, right? So, but if they, without the 421A, they're still doing rental, so they must mean they need to raising that rental in order to, they can able to pay some small money, right? So doesn't mean that the condo price coming up because the rental price come up and then condo price come up. So, so there's a lot of uncertainty for 421A. So we very urgent to like to understand how it's coming up. What is the final decision from the government? So so we can able to plan our price better. I want to hear from you, Brian. So if without 421A, what you can do?
Well, we fortunately got our footings in on 44th Street. So, but to the point about financing rates, we're a couple hundred basis points higher than we originally projected when we bought the land. We have enough of a balance sheet that we can. So it's not only that the interest rates have gone up, but the loan to cost has come down. So everyone who was underwriting 65%, first mortgage construction financing, that's down to 60, and when we run the numbers, it's actually down to about 57, 58%, which puts a large burden on more equity and lower returns for the equity. So there are going to be lots of projects that aren't going to get done. Even if you got the 421A, to your point, you can't finance it, and if you haven't gotten your footings in and you missed 421A, there's really no chance.
Well, Eric, how, with the condo rental market burgeoning and booming here, we're reading the high prices of Manhattan.
That all means that prices are going to start going up. Because
Tell me how that's
there's less supply, and if there's less supply, prices are going up. It's just common knowledge. So the government, the city, needs to come up with a new plan for 420A or whatever the next version of that is. And I think they should also, there should be some sort of PSA on educating the public on supply and demand also, to be perfectly honest. Because a lot of the public isn't as educated on supply and demand. And they just think, don't build, and it's great. But no, if you don't build, prices are going to go up. And I said this at, I think, 3 of the hearings. I said that I spoke at 4 or 5, but I said at 3 of them, I said, when people were talking about supply and demand as a myth, I said, well, you know what, a good example is COVID. During COVID, half the city left, and vacancy rates was at like 40%, and the prices dipped like 40 or 50%. I mean, some people in Long Island City were giving 5 months free rent. right? And then as soon as the lockdowns opened up and people started coming back, there's more demand. So, more supply, more demand, less supply now. So the prices started going up, everything started filling up, and then now vacancy rates are like a 1%, if that. You have lines around the block. There was an article in the Post a couple weeks ago, somebody saw a line, they thought it was for a brunch, and it was for an open house. So again, I think more supply equals, I guess, better prices.
Which leads to how I want to wrap this up. What is next? What is next? When we see more supply, different type of assets, different type of industries, what do you see or would want to see coming into this market?
I mean, as much as I would love to see everybody coming back to the office. Please, everybody go back to the office. As much as I would like to see the offices at 100% occupancy now, they're I think at 40. At the current moment, we do need more residential.
Tracy, I'll ask the same.
I want to see the Western Queens world go back to the place where we had community leaders, business leaders, politicians all working together to cheerlead for this neighborhood. And we got an awful lot done for about 12 years there.
Amen.
And that would be awesome if we could start working together again, because I think we did. We got a lot done. And I think you have the participants, and hopefully we can get everybody on the same page and move forward.
That sounds great. Justin?
I'd like to see, more high-quality retailers coming to the area to service the people that are coming here. I'd like to see the continuation of more resources for young families, because this really has been a really big high-family neighborhood, and I do think that we will, and we need to see a replacement to 421A. I think we need to allow the elections to kind of happen so nobody can kind of take a position one way or the other, and allow people to get elected, and then, I think they'll deal with it after that, and I think you will see something get passed, probably with lower AMIs and maybe something permanent in it.
Bentley, what are you hoping for the future, or some of the things you want to do for the future?
Like Justin said, I like the city will get back to normal order soon, right? I am the candidate of the New York City Development Corporation, right? So we supposed to be on board in September, but now we didn't get any notice from the mayor office yet. That's why the 421 is so messy. Nobody make decision, right? It's because most that the new leader in every department not leader ready to discuss the strategy. As a developer, we want certainty. So we want that, able to have a final decision, and we know what we do. I can either underwriting my condo better or underwriting the rental project better. So also for Queens or Long City, we want, like they said, we want more school coming up in the neighborhood, because definitely not enough school. Think about that 3,000 unit at Silverstein. Let's say 10-20% of that family have a kid, so they need to have a 600 kid. So they're enough for one school. So where's the planning for the new school? Right? We come up with so many condos there. Where the kid to go, right? Without a school, you cannot have a family move there, and then, it become an unstable neighborhood, because we want to have a guy with about 40 years old, have more stable income, move to neighborhood than may stay there as a home, not only temporary for rental.
I think these are all fantastic. And Brian, I'm ending with you for a reason, because I've been part of one of your developments, because I live down the block from the entire World Trade Center. Been there since '07 and really seen firsthand that growth. Now you have Q&S, and you're doing the same thing in Queens. And personally, I've always been excited to know what's next for Silverstein. What's next for you, and what excites you either in this market or even around this area? Sorry about that.
That's a big question.
That's why it was the last one.
Well, Larry Silverstein truly believes in New York City, and as you've referenced, we're active at the World Trade Center. The article that said we got approval at 5 World Trade Center was not accurate. We just started the public process. We have a bruising battle to go through there, but we hope by the end of the year we'll be successful. But Silverstein believes in New York City, and we particularly believe in neighborhoods like Astoria. So we're developing in Inwood. We're developing in Jersey City. We just invested in a deal in Gowanus. So we believe in New York City, and what we're really hoping for is that leadership in New York City figures out a way to balance the needs of the existing residents, right? So if we build shiny new buildings in Astoria, that's going to impact the people who live next door. And so that's a legitimate issue that has to be addressed. We can't address it ourselves, the city needs to, right? Whether that's Mayor Adams or Speaker Adams, the city needs to come to grips with these sorts of things. But we're highly optimistic about New York City. It's the greatest city in the world, and we look to just do more here.
I think that's a great way to end this, and I want to thank everyone. I know we have sure questions from the audience. This has been a panel. We got a lot of great information. Everyone was leading the way, and for me personally, hearing a lot about the social, the infrastructure, more than just the building, but really how it impacts. And everyone here on the stage is really leading that. So thank you all, and thank you for this great conversation. I really appreciate it. And Chris, we'd love to get some questions from the audience for the panelists.
Yeah, we can open it up to questions, and Justin, I am going to switch mics with you so I can pass that around. Thank you. Appreciate the flexibility. Raise your hand if you have a question. I will bring a mic around. Making it easy for me.
Yeah, I didn't hear a lot about affordable housing or supportive housing. Do you see any strategies with all that you've spoken about, which is very positive and a great view? Appreciate that from you on the Silverstein side, to see the positive from New York. But that's a balancing part of this act that needs to be addressed. Do you see any solutions or actions being taken in that direction?
Well, I think there's a recognition in parts of the administration, which is that private developers can only do so much. And with MIH at 25, 30%, depending on which program you're taking, that costs versus affordable housing have gotten to the point where the developer can't handle too much more. And so I think there's a recognition that the city, state, federal level needs to step in and create programs and the New York State has limited resources, right? So we've spoken to at the state level, and they have limited resources, and they're trying to balance where it goes. Does it go in Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, New York City? The government has to do more. That's really, and there's an acknowledgement by parts, but it's going to take time.
We have another question here.
Faced with lack of 421A and possible low occupancy in commercial space, do we see a workaround there where there might be conversions?
I mean, I think based off the speed the city is moving, we were hoping that was going to happen mid-COVID, that they were going to allow for conversions of office space. It really requires a revisions to the zoning code to change air and light requirements, and because a lot of these office buildings that were built, they're just way too deep, and you can't actually convert them economically to or legally to residential. So I think it's going to take a big rezoning to allow that, and they should also heavily start looking at lifting the cap on the residential FAR. I think it's crazy that somebody can't build more residential if they have the ability to do it, and they should start limiting some of the commercial FAR in those areas. I know that was proposed, it wasn't passed, but I think that's something that they should look at, and they should continue to. We're big investors in Gowanus. We have a little over 1 million square feet in Gowanus. I know Silverstein has a project in Gowanus, and I think that what happened in Gowanus as far as that rezoning is a good strategy for affordable housing, which is rezone an area and make it contingent that you can only build rental and that you have to build permanent affordable housing at very deep AMIs. The land prices are going to jump either way. The landowner is going to make a bunch of money and want to sell, and the guy buying it has to build it. There's no option. You can only do that. So I think Gowanus is a really good strategy, but we're balancing the idea that people want affordable housing, but they don't want areas to be rezoned that they live in. So, something's got to give, and I think that's a good strategy to do it.
And conversions really, with office buildings, they really don't work. You're going to have units, like apartments that are probably 80 feet deep. or whatever. So it's going to end up costing you more on the conversion, and it just doesn't make sense. A lot of the office buildings, especially in Manhattan, are entire blocks, and it doesn't just make sense to convert those to residential.
So having said that, we're doing a conversion at 55 Broad Street. So it is doable. It's hard, and it takes a lot of creativity. But when you have an office building, Rudin is selling us an office building, and it was 40% occupied. And at that price, we could afford to buy the building, negotiate with the tenants to empty it out, and then convert. So it is possible.
Terrific. Eric just alluded to it. It's all about the pricing. That leads us into our next panel, which will be on looking at multifamily, making the equation work, taking a look at the capital stack and the capital market side of things. But before we move on to panel 2, big round of applause for our opening panel. Thank you, guys. If we can get panelists